God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Happy Father's Day. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I want this video to be our celebration of Father's Day video. I don't usually upload on Sundays, and I'm going to be busy this weekend, so I'm not going to be able to upload this video on Sunday. This will be going up on Friday. And I want it to be our Father's Day video. And I want to use this opportunity to talk about how important it is for fathers to be present in their children's lives and to be a good influence on their children. And I want to begin with this column from Patriot Post, which laments the struggle that fathers, a little bit of the struggle that fathers are facing in our current culture to stay relevant. I want to look at some of the lines and paragraphs here. First of all, notice this observation. This is something that I've noticed, and you probably have as well, that pop culture portrays dads as useless at best. Sort of useless at best, bumbling, incapable fools at worst. And it's just an element of the culture that dads sort of have to struggle against. And I thought that this here was an interesting paragraph, that part of what starts fathers perhaps on the path out of their children's lives is what's called maternal gatekeeping. When dad can't quite get the hang of holding the baby, or holding the bottle, or folds the laundry in a manner mom doesn't approve, that criticism becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy as the mother shuts the father out of the parenting process. And I myself am not a father yet. I would hope to be someday. But I can imagine this being the case. I can imagine, in the nuclear family, the mother stays home and takes care of the children, and so the dad doesn't get a lot of practice. So whenever he takes an opportunity to try and do something for his kids, and he ends up bungling it, well then the mother would kind of take over and say, here, I'll take care of that. You don't need to know how to do this because you're not going to be doing it that often anyhow. And that starts the process of closing fathers out of the child rearing loop. Now, I don't think that this is done out of malice on the part of most mothers. I don't even think it's done on purpose on the part of most mothers. I just think this is an interesting observation that this writer here at Patriot Post makes. And I wanted to highlight it a little bit. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about, this seems just a little interesting to me, especially in our, I scrolled past the paragraph that I wanted to talk about. In our current cultural climate of hyper-inclusivity and hyper-diversity almost, it seems funny to me that there would be such an oversight as to not craft child-rearing instruction programs that don't cater to men. We have, as many columns have been talking about in the days leading up to Father's Day this year, there are so many non-father figures in children's lives these days that perhaps we should just abolish Father's Day altogether, and we should just focus on Parents' Day, because there are so many single mother households, there are so many lesbian households, there are so many alternative family households that it's not right to to recognize fathers and give them their own day. It seems strange to me that our hyper-inclusivity culture, that the hyper-inclusivity social justice culture would seek to exclude fathers in this way. And this paragraph here, this next paragraph, I want to read verbatim because it strikes me as a chillingly accurate observation. Unfortunately, things may get worse for dear old dad before they get better, and we kind of go to the root of where some of these fatherhood problems come from. Writer John Hawkins describes the rise of what's considered toxic masculinity, noting, we take a young man and kick his father out of his life, send him to school where he has mostly woman teachers, barrage him with negative messages about masculinity, then turn him loose at college, where we treat him like a guilty until proven innocent rapist. After all that, we blame masculinity when he goes off the rails, despite the fact that he spent a lifetime bathed in femininity. Unsurprisingly, the more women try to change masculinity, the more negative and toxic it actually becomes. And, you can think about this. Think about the work that third wave feminism, women's liberals, and feminazis have done to try and obliterate the role of men at large in society. Despite all of this work, fathers, and therefore men, remain a crucial part of children's lives. Just earlier, we skipped over it, but there's kind of a line here that it seems is just slapped onto the end of this paragraph, but is nevertheless important, that the role that fathers play in their children's lives can strengthen their emotional and physical health and increases their chance of getting a college degree. And that line made me think, I wonder what positive effects fathers have on their children's lives. And you can just Google the effect of fatherlessness on children, and you can find scholarly article after scholarly article after scholarly article. And if you've got the time enough to read through some of these articles, power to you. I didn't have time today, so instead of reading through one of these articles, I'm just going to share with you a little infograph that I found from the Marriage and Religion Research Institute, titled Effects of Fatherlessness on Children's Development. And I think that as fatherlessness grows due to the effects of third wave feminism, women liberals, and feminazis, that we're going to see these effects exacerbate. The headline issue of this pamphlet is, in the United States, 1 in 3 children live in a fatherless home. Children deprived of a father are robbed of physical, emotional, intellectual, and economic benefits throughout their lifetime. The fatherless family is the root cause of the majority of social ills today. And the fatherless family, this is my opinion, this is not stated by this pamphlet, but the fatherless family is a symptom of what progressivism and far left liberalism has done to our society. So let's read through some of these. Sexual practices. A girl whose father leaves the home before she is 5 years old is 8 times more likely to have an adolescent pregnancy than a girl whose father remains in her home. Now, that's an interesting statistic. And when you understand what feminazis are all about, you might understand why they might like to see fathers thrust from the homes of their daughters. Feminazis being the people that they are, wishing to see the maximum number of abortions performed in the United States at any given time. You would think that they would be thrilled by a statistic like this. Let's look at the next one. African American girls are 42% less likely to have sexual intercourse before age 18 if their biological father is present at home. Now, this goes against the grain of third wave feminism and women liberals, because sexual liberation was a big proponent of, I think, third wave feminism. Maybe that was just the sexual liberation movement that happened before my time, but that feels like a element of third wave feminism, and certainly of women liberals, that women should get to have carefree and no strings attached sex anytime that they want, and that they shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of having this, of living this kind of lifestyle. And so you can understand how shocking and appalling a statistic like this would be to those kind of people. Boys that are close with their fathers have better attitudes about intimacy and the prospect of their own married lives than boys who do not feel close to their fathers. That should be astounding. That should mean that feminists demand that fathers stay home with their children. That boys who are close with their fathers have better attitudes about intimacy. You know what that translates into? That translates into boys who have strong father figures understand sex better. They understand sex better in terms of context, like consent, like a proper sexual lifestyle, like a healthy sexual lifestyle. You would think that feminists would rabidly demand that fathers stay home with their sons just so we can have a better environment of consent in this country. And yet they do not. Let's look at the next one. Adolescents who live without their fathers are more likely to engage in greater and earlier sexual activity and are more likely to become pregnant as teenagers and are more likely to have a child outside of marriage. That seems like two contrasting statistics there. More likely to become pregnant as a teenager would suggest that those individuals would be more prone to have an abortion, which feminazis would love. But more likely to have a child outside of marriage points away from having an abortion, which feminazis hate. Feminazis hate it when an abortion is not performed. And so this, you kind of get a conflicting statistic here. Let's look at the next one. Education. Children who live without their fathers are more likely to have decreased school performance. That sounds like privilege. That sounds like privilege that you can give to your child, fathers. Any of you fathers out there that might be watching this program that might be shirking your responsibility as a father. Now, I trust that any fathers watching this program are not shirking their responsibilities as fathers. But if there is any, and you believe in the idea of socioeconomic privilege, then you ought to be doing everything that you can to give your children all of the privilege that you were deprived in your childhood. And one of the greatest ways that you can do that is to be a father for your children. Children who do not live with their father are more likely to experience behavioral problems at school. And of course, children who experience behavioral problems at school are distracted children. And what does the left tell us all the time about distracted children, specifically about the distraction of hunger? Distracted children cannot learn and cannot become the greatest students that they can. I've said this before about gender confusion. Why are we pushing gender confusion on our children when we know that distracted children do not learn as well as children who are not distracted? So if you are there for your child as a father, if you're being a good father figure for your child, they're going to be distracted less at school and they're going to perform better. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. And we know that dropping out is of course, in the vast majority of cases, worse than the alternative, which would be finishing high school. So we do not, so being there for your child, being a father for your child is going to astronomically increase their chances of finishing school, which is going to increase their economic prospects. Deviant behavior. This could be a controversial one. The child with an available father is more companionable and responsible as an adult. And what does companionable and responsible mean? That means less likely to beat a woman. That means less likely to abuse a woman. That means less likely to take advantage of women or to try and sexually abuse or rape women. Feminists, you ought to be demanding that fathers stay at home or stay in the home, at least, with their children, so that they can be good role models, so that there can be less rape culture in the United States. Let's look at the next one. Boys and girls who live without their fathers are less likely to be able to delay gratification, have poor impulse control over anger and sexual gratification, and have a weaker sense of right and wrong. And of course, what would all of this be indicative of? That fatherless children are more likely to participate actively in rape culture, participate actively in the type of environment that discourages women from coming out and telling their stories of sexual abuse, that discourages women from making free choices, that leads to more women having to deal with single parenthood. Again, you ought to be demanding that fathers stay in their homes with their children. What's this last one here? Children who live without their fathers are, on average, more likely to choose deviant peers, have trouble getting along with other children, be at higher risk for peer problems, and be more aggressive. Again, what's this all indicative of? Choosing deviant peers. Be more aggressive. That again speaks to participation in rape culture, participation in the environment that, again, discourages women from making freer choices, from participating in sexual liberation. And I'm not even endorsing these lifestyles. I'm just saying that this is the kind of stuff you should be endorsing because it lends itself to what you say you want. And that is, of course, sexual liberation, less rape culture, a more broad environment for sexual freedom and participation. And I want to look at the last thing I want to look at for this pamphlet is this graphic over here. Percent of fatherless youth who exhibit behavior. Juvenile delinquents who come from fatherless homes, 70%. High school dropouts, 71%. We saw that one earlier. Children with behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes, 85%. Youth suicides from fatherless homes, 63%. We talked a little bit about the suicide problem in the United States of America. And it could be that part of the reason it's on the rise is because of the prevalence of fatherless homes. If you want to see the suicide epidemic be reduced, you ought to demand that fathers stay in the homes with their children, because it's going to lead to less suicide. Let's read this conclusion real quick. Every child has a fundamental right to a married mother and father. As MARRI research available online shows, society will continue to remain in a crisis until fathers accept the responsibility of caring for and protecting their children. And women, you have a responsibility as well. Not only do fathers have a responsibility to stay in their homes and take care of their children, women have a responsibility to pick a sexual partner or a mate, a husband, who is going to be a good father. If you are choosing a man to be your mate or to be your husband, as it were, who is not going to be a good father, you are choosing less privilege for your child. And why would you want to do that? Why would you want to choose to disadvantage your child? You shouldn't want to do that. Fathers, why would you want to choose to disadvantage your children by abandoning them? I understand that it's a hard society to make marriage work in this day and age. It's a hard society to make being a father, it's a hard society to make being a male work these days. Men and masculinity, the classic male quest that we talked about yesterday is derided in society. And there is not a lot you can do about that, but there is one thing that you can do. You can be a father for your children. You can be there for your loved ones. You can defy societal expectations, and you can pursue the quest of providing for your children, for being a good father, for looking out for the ones that you love. And I encourage every father watching this video today to, first of all, have a happy Father's Day, but second of all, be there for your children. Be the best father that you can be for your children. Be the father that your children deserve. Be the father that can provide the most benefit for your children. And I meant to bring this up earlier, and it's just come to my mind right now. For those of you watching that might be thinking about abolishing Father's Day, Father's Day is about the fathers. Father's Day is about celebrating the fathers. And part of this video is an admonition to fathers that even as we celebrate you, remember that you have a responsibility. But for those individuals that are talking about abolishing Father's Day because it's not inclusive of children that don't have fathers, or abolishing Father's Day because it's not inclusive of families that don't have fathers, Father's Day is not about any of those people. Father's Day is not about single mothers. Father's Day is not about lesbians. Father's Day is not even about children. Father's Day is about fathers. And we ought to be celebrating them. We ought to be celebrating fathers because of the great boon that they are for our society. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Leave a like if you did. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you want to see more content like this, hit subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you check back every weekday for a new report. You never know what shenanigans are going on with YouTube leadership these days. Again, thank you for watching. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your Father's Day. I hope that you'll join me next time. Until then, good night. Have a great weekend, and God bless.